So very good morning and a warm welcome to all of you who are here online live. Not so many this week, and I think more and more people look on YouTube. But anyway, you're a very warm welcome. And for those of you who are joining on YouTube, then good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Before we start, I'd like to thank everyone who sent me such lovely well wishes, knowing that I wasn't that well. As I said to one or two people or in a few emails, I'm a baby beginner at suffering. I've had a very lucky life, and I've not been hospitalized since I was, seven years old, I think. I've had illnesses, but nothing really to speak of. And so it's always an amazing experience to go to hospital and just see pallid, thin people walking around with drips and people on trolleys and all sorts of suffering. And so what I had was sort of standard for an old guy, and nothing too big a deal. But it's very interesting example of how things which look like obstacles can actually be blessings in disguise. So I had a few weeks ago a very stressful period of time, a series of events, and it's that caused experiences, which caused investigations, which showed that I had one, what they call it, one artery is a word. What's the word? It's not cardiac, it's something else. Anyway, one of the arteries of the heart was between 90 and 99% blocked. And so it could have been a very, very coronary artery, thank you. So it could have been very serious. And that's what my cardiologist had said when he sent me to get the stents put in. So I had a couple of stents put in, and things are a lot better now. So anyway, thank you for your well wishes, and I'm very, very grateful because I had wonderful doctors, and within about 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks, from beginning to end, everything was done. GP, cardiologist, hospital, operation, done. So anyway, thank you. So now we need to finish today. This is the 9th of our 9 sessions on the third Karmapa's Buddha nature teachings. And, when we do a teaching, we have to focus on what it is. And it's usually quite structured in the Tibetan system. So we go through this point, that point, a series of points. But let's never forget the context. We're looking at the Buddha nature teachings, third turning of the wheel of Dharma, but that's in the more general context of what we need to know as bodhisattvas. And as bodhisattvas, then our whole point in this life is to turn away from ego and self-centeredness, to be more and more there for everybody, to learn how to be kind, loving, caring, no matter what the situation is, no matter how people are to us, nothing but love and care and skill in what we do. It's a long journey. It's not an easy path. Some of the ways we learn sometimes are by falling flat on our face and breaking our nose and then getting up and carrying on and walking more carefully afterwards. But the bodhisattva wish, the bodhisattva state of mind, the bodhisattva practice, such huge loving care from the heart for everybody, as much as one can throughout the day, is why we're learning about Buddha nature. And when we do learn about Buddha nature, we can see why. is because what we're starting to discover, this warmth, this joy, this bigger picture, this faith is inside everybody, and discovering it, working with it, is an absolute life changer. So I hope you're getting on okay with doing our starting prayers in English. I'd like your feedback on that sometime. So let's do them now. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these things to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes for future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering. And may they attain the great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata Shame Shamawati Shameta Shadra Kurim Arajite Karota Keore Tejowati Oloyani Pishuda Nimale Malapana Ye Kukure Kaka Grace Grasana Omuki Paramuki Amuki Shamedavane Sawa Graha Bandhanane Grihedva Sawa Bhava Pravatina Vimukta Marapasha Savitva Buddha Mudra Anugatita Sava Mare Butsarita Parishuddhi Biga Shantu Sava Mara Kama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above my head, on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain me, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. So, where are we? We're in this text showing the essence of the Tathagatas, and we're in the main explanation of Buddha nature, the essence of the Tathagatas. For us, it's our Buddha nature, our potential. For Buddhas, it's what they are. And so that's in 5 parts. We haven't focused very tightly on the structure of this text, although I think I've mentioned most as we've gone through. So first, we had the quote from the Abhidharma about all beings having Buddha nature, and so on. We also had a quote from the Hevajra Tantra. In a second part of 5 main parts, then we looked briefly at what came up afterwards here and there, which is false and correct mental activity, often called thinking in translations, but it's more than thinking. It's whatever your mind can do. Our mind can just have pictures, it can remember, our mind can be angry, it can feel, there's all sorts of things happen in the mind beside just the words, the thoughts, the words in the head. So mental activity. In general, to become aware of Buddha nature, or to become this Buddha nature, the changeless, timeless nature, we have to go beyond all mental activity, all of it, all of it. So in the bigger picture, mental activity is, can't say it's our enemy, it's our working material, but we are going beyond it. All the thoughts, the good thoughts, the bad thoughts, all the feelings of anger, pride, and so on, but also feelings of devotion and personal love for sentient beings and so on. And our love, our compassion develops as we grow. So in the longer picture, to get out of all samsara forever, then we need to go beyond all mental activity. But in the process of going beyond all of it, we need to be crystal clear about there is within the activity of our mind, this busy mind that's thinking, feeling, remembering, projecting, fantasizing, doing all it does. There is good and bad. There is helpful and harmful. There is virtue and there is non-virtue or evil. These are very real. These are very, very real. And anyone who thinks they're not real is an idiot. Just look in the world around you. If you want to be some stupid Buddhist saying, it's all good. And anyway, it's all illusion like that. When people are hurting each other horribly, we should never do that. But we need to know the bigger picture. So as long as the mind is busy, and even not so busy, as long as the mind is minding, doing what mind does, thinking, feeling, remembering, occupied with the past, the future, and so on, then we must be very clear that there is what is called correct mental activity, which is virtue, which is Dharma, Dharma practice, Dharma thoughts, loving thoughts in a relative world. Dharma practice, Vajrayana practice, very complicated, very, very, very conceptual and dualistic. I make offerings to you, I prostrate to you. It doesn't get much more dualistic than that, but so useful. It frees us. So we need to be clear about that. And although that section was brief, because we're in this third turning of the wheel of Dharma, which assumes we know lots and lots from the first and the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, then it says, all of this blah, blah, blah about voidness, clarity, all those, Mahamudra and Dzogchen words and all of that. You need to know that they are helpful thinking, wonderful thinking, but you also need to know that they are thinking and that they are mental activity. It's always the same. We saw in a later section, the two sticks rubbing together. We need the virtue to challenge the non-virtue, to work with the non-virtue, to get the friction so that both, like two sticks, ignite and they're gone. We need the bodhisattva path, which is, like Coca-Cola and Coca-Cola Light. Bodhisattva mind is, you are a bodhisattva, you relate to other people as a bodhisattva. It's kind of ego light, ego that's not harmful. And by shifting from ego heavy, dangerous, harmful, to ego light, bodhisattva being, then we're in a very lightweight place that can be dissolved so much more easily than the old samsaric self. So there was a second section, quite short, about false and correct mental activity. Then a big section explaining Tathagata Garbha, Buddha nature, Buddha essence, the essential character of Buddha. And we more or less got to the end of that in our previous session. We have 2 more sections to go. One is called Answering Objections, and the other one's called supports that through scripture, gaining certainty through scripture. So that's what we have to cover today. And then we come out of the detailed explanation, and in the overall structure of the book, where there's a beginning, middle, and end, we come to the conclusion. So then this next section is called Answering Objections. Why? Who's going to object to Buddha nature? Well, more people than you'd think, because you have to remember the basics of Buddha's teaching all over the world, in Southern Asia, in Japan, and so on, is no self. And taking apart, saying self is the cause of suffering, and then taking it apart, no self. And then the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, all the teachings of Nagarjuna, the no teachings, not this, not that, not all those Abhidharma things, not the 18 elements of consciousness, not this, no nose, no eye, no tongue, the Heart Sutra, all of that, showing the illusory nature of our mental activity, taking it apart. Even helpful ideas like cause and effect, looking into it with absolute logic. Could it be? Can you prove that there's cause and effect? And then, so anyway, that's Nagarjuna, it's a big journey. All of that show there is nothing, no self. And then we get to the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, and it says, this is who you really are. What? No, we're Buddhists. Everybody else is saying, there's God. They're saying you have a super self, an Atman, an ego, a divine identity. We're the Buddhists. We're the different ones. We do anatma, no self. It's what we're all about. And now, who are these guys? Asanga and his mates up there in sort of Pakistan, and they're saying, and not only they say this is your real self, they say it's permanent. We're Buddhists. We only do impermanence everywhere. Nothing lasts. Now they've got a self. They've got this permanent, and then they say this is happiness. We're Buddhists. It's all suffering, misery everywhere. It's what we're about. It's what we've learned. We've seen it. And so they say, this is happiness. So there are objections, and not just from within Buddhism, but from outside Buddhism as well, from people who think all sorts of things about there is a God or a set of gods, 3 gods or whatever. People have all sorts of ideas about what's going on. This is where it gets hot, where it gets real. Why are you? Why did life happen to you in that way? Why was this so fair, so unfair? Why? Is God doing this? Is it just karma? Is it all a mess? Is it also, why? What's going on here? So we have the section dealing with objections. But the problem is, unless we're equipped with a lot of Buddhist knowledge, and in particular Abhidharma knowledge, all the analyses of mind and matter, and not just the ideas, but where we've done actual practical work in our meditation, bringing those ideas to life. So we see what they're talking about, how objects trigger eye consciousness, how eye consciousness triggers desire, how desire gets our mind thinking, and how that gets us involved in creating karmas and so on. We need to bring it to life through practice. So without a very thorough study basis, so that when I use a term, you know exactly what I mean, and you have experience of what I mean, it's very hard to go deep into this section of dealing with objections. But we'll go through it simply, just so you've got an idea. And as I mentioned at, I think, the end of last week's talk, the third Karmapa who gave us this text was living in a time in Tibet of Buddhist reform, and people were setting up their stalls of, this is our view, this is our lineage that came from India, the Sakyapas and the Kajupas mainly, and then from 5-6 centuries before, the Nyingmapas. The Gelugpas didn't exist then. So when we come to dealing with this, objections, we've got 7 sections. Okay, the first one is that causelessness. So what are we talking about in all of this? We've just had the section explaining Buddha nature, explaining the essence of the Tathagatas. We saw the kayas. The main thing about the kayas is their qualities. This is very important, very important. In the second turning, we always end up with nothing. Nothing, no this, no that. It's kind of like empty space. As the truth of mind, the truth of your mind, my mind, empty space. So now in the Buddha nature teachings, we're saying it's not just nothing. Oh no, there is blessing in there. That blessing is in the form that the timeless, changeless nature of you and me and everything is compassionate, loving, wise, peaceful, powerful. And we summed that up through the 32 qualities of the Dhammakaya, and then afterwards the other 32 qualities of the form kayas, which in this text, the second set of 32, we didn't really go into. So qualities is very important in the Buddha nature teachings. When we study it in the larger text of Asanga, once we've seen what Buddha nature is, which we do through the 10 points and the 9 examples and 3 basic, very important notions, then we go on to look at qualities. And then because of those qualities, Buddha activity, enlightened activity to help others. So we're looking at objections about our idea that the true nature of mind is rich in qualities. And if you remember the quote, it says there are the 32, but each one of those has like 1 million actual manifestations. So the first one is causelessness, mainly. And that there is no cause. Now, if you remember one of the earlier talks, it was said, this is the cause. And I explained what was meant there. Not in relative level, causes and effect, but this timeless, changeless state, forever state, is the cause for getting it wrong and ending up in samsara, or for all the blessings that help get us out of suffering and harm. So it is the cause. So some people think there is no cause. There's no God. There's no karma. Things just happen. Luck, lucky, unlucky. This person gets knocked down by a bus. Unlucky. Not karma. Unlucky. Just happens. Stuff happens. Life happens. Just a whole bunch of atoms, hormones, chemicals, and you're lucky or unlucky or a mixture of the two. So he says, if your attitude towards Buddha mind, towards the truth of your own mind, is wrong. And if you're objecting from that point of view, that this isn't the cause, that everything has, on our level, if you look closely enough, everything has meaning in terms of a Dharma path. If there was causelessness, then there wouldn't be any point. We might as well just switch off Ken's YouTube and go to the movies, watch something. Why not? It's just visuals. There's no cause, there's no point, there's no purpose. No point to being alive, having a precious human birth. No point to taking the bodhisattva vow. So, causelessness. See, he's talking to Buddhists here amongst others, because he's saying, those who hold the idea that Buddha qualities have no condition, what difference between them and non-Buddhists? So he's saying, if you followed the voidness teaching, shunyata, emptiness teachings, and it's just destroyed all your ideas, it doesn't exist, this doesn't exist, it's just a thought, just my mind, you could end up not feeling, not sensing the profound spiritual purpose of this life. You just become a nihilist, like the philosophical traditions of nihilism. So what's the difference? Or if you think Buddha qualities are Buddha qualities, something out there in Buddhas but not in you, not latent in you, then what difference between you and a non-Buddhist? So if we went into that, I could say, okay, you're telling me, right, Mr. Buddha nature philosopher, you're telling me that I've got all the Buddha's qualities inside me, the 10 wisdoms, for instance, 10 powers of wisdom. Do you know me? Have you lived with me for a few years? Have you ever seen any one of these 10 powers of wisdom work? And you're telling me this is who you really are, Ken? If you tell me stuff about everyday me, and this is who you really are, this is what you get up to, sure, I confess, that's me. But if you tell me I'm really Buddha, where? When? Did anybody ever see it? Except in my wildest dreams. So here it's saying, everyone, and not just humans, every sentient being has this potential inside. Everyone. So if you say that these are not inside you, then what's the difference between you and people who have, for instance, the idea of God, who's all-powerful, almighty, and we're just humans, have to be afraid of God and comply. Otherwise you're in trouble. So I said, what's the difference? So that's the first objection about causelessness, or that causes enlightened activity not within us. Then the second one is about what I mentioned earlier. There is mental activity, and it can be helpful or harmful. Here it's called pure or impure. And very important. And our next course is about practicing pure mental activity. So it says the active force, that means the karma force, manifests in instants, appearing and disappearing. The impure active force and the pure one alike. If it were not like this, the activity of the form kaya would be interrupted. Therefore, do not use the name active force, or active force means like principle of karma, but rather say jhana that understands diversity, or discerning jhana. It's one of the 5 Buddha wisdoms. So here it's talking about, on our level, what happens is new every moment. What causes each moment that comes and goes is karma. So karma is the karmic force, or the active principle. Actions, karma means actions in the past. And all the sum total of our actions and individual actions gave rise to this moment, and then it's gone for the next unique moment to come. So the way our mind manifests is in a series of instants. In Abhidharma, we look into these instants. That's why I said Abhidharma is useful. And so let's have a bit of fun. From the Abhidharma, how long is an instant? Well, we're going back to the days before watches, stopwatches and hundredths of seconds and thousandths of seconds. So to show roughly how long is an instant, one text says, well, you take a mushroom, and underneath the mushroom, you have the gills, all the little spokes. You take 100 gills and you make a pile, and you squeeze the pile, you compress it, so you've got a pile of mushroom gills. And then you take a sharp sewing needle and you push it through the gills. So the average time the point of the needle takes to go from one gill to the next is roughly the time of what we call a mind moment. And then people who do shamatha meditation and who attain the dhyanas, it says they can actually, their mind is aware down to that level of this moment, gone, next moment, gone, next moment, gone, next moment, gone. For us, it's like watching a movie, the old-fashioned films, where you have one image, another image, but it goes so fast it looks like it's continuous. It doesn't look like still, still, still. It looks like movement. So they are mind moments. So it says whether it's your samsaric mind moments of experience, or whether it's your Dharma path moments of experience, sacred experience, and everything we can experience as part of the path, it is produced through karma. Good karma, bad karma, virtuous karma, unvirtuous karma. They're the same in terms of causes make results. It's just some causes make harmful results, some causes make liberating results. Big difference. So it says that's how this relative world, in our 6 realms of samsara, humans, animals, and gods, and so on, that's how they work. They're moment by moment films. Once we understand the all-pervading, ever-present nature of Buddha mind, then it said, learn to see this not in such dualistic terms as good and evil, good rebirth, bad rebirth, following a Dharma path, going down the tubes of samsara, but rather see the whole thing as the potential for discerning wisdom to manifest. So this is what we are learning now to cultivate. Discernment. We can discern not just fire from water, black from white, red from blue. We can discern virtue from non-virtue. We are intelligent sentient beings who, through our good karmic fortune, have received the teachings on this harms other people and yourself, and this helps, this liberates. So the whole of life, every moment that presents itself to us, as we witness the world, as we witness our own heart and mind at work, is a potential for more and more discernment to be there so that we get wiser. And then as we evolve along the path, this becomes when, in the bodhisattva levels, we start to open up to enlightened Buddhas discerning wisdom. That's the second point about discerning wisdom. The third point is about another one of the enlightened wisdoms, which is called activity accomplishing wisdom. That's in two parts. The first part is about duality, subject and object, manifest through 5 doorways. That's the title. So it says, that which has the nature of the elements and so on, the objects of sensory perception, along with the perceiving mind, becomes the essence endowed with power, which manifests after purification. There is no difference whatsoever in the manifestation of both illusion and non-illusion. So we need to understand this properly, especially that last line, last 2 lines. That last line, there's no difference. On our level, there's a big difference. But what it means is there is no difference in the character. Put it simply, you have a nasty, evil thought. You have a kind, beautiful thought. They're both thoughts, right? Your head is saying something. I wish he was dead. I wish him long life. There's a voice saying something. So why is that happening? It's because all of our life, from the moment we were conceived, although it took a while to develop our organs and so on, has been an experience through 5 doorways. We saw, we heard, we smelt, we tasted, and our whole feeling system, nerves and so on, made us hungry, thirsty, satiated, hot, cold, pleasant sensations to touch, pleasant sensations to go through, lovemaking, and unpleasant sensations to go through. The 5 senses. Even from a tiny baby, you put some food in their mouth and they spit it out, and you put other food in their mouth and they're kind of happy. It starts from there and it builds up as we go through life to a whole experiential story. So in that story, as we explore in Abhidharma, we are operating through our 5 senses. That's the experiences. And then because of those, we build up a mental commentary. We learn words. We learn ideas. We hear little children, aping the words of their parents. They're like, it's very funny. And then they start to learn to think for themselves. But all of the mental rhetoric is based on the direct experiences of the 5 senses, and we learn to work with that in Dharma. things that we told ourselves, I like this, don't like that, that's good, that's bad. We can change our thinking. So this is useful. Actually, my enemy is a friend, and so on. Anyway, so it's dualistic. There's always a me and other on our level. So whether it's the Dharma path that's helpful, or whether it's the samsaric habits that repeat, the mechanism is the same. So it says there's no difference in the manifestation of illusion and non-illusion where we can see it happening. So let me give you an example of that. I'm sorry it's a very much used example, but it really does work. And it's that of a rainbow in space, in the sky. Okay. So I think everyone here must have seen a rainbow, right? So it's an experience I can talk about, but we know. Where is it? When it's there, like actually there. Imagine we all go out in the garden and we squirt a hose pipe up in the air. There's a bit of sunlight and we can all see a rainbow. Is it out there? While you're looking at it, could you get somebody to go with a cup and bring you back the colors? If it was out there, you could can rainbows, If they were out there, you could collect them. Is it out there? Well, of course it isn't, because where is it out there? The person who's here sees it there. The person who's here sees it there. Everybody's looking, saying, wow, look at that wonderful rainbow. They're all seeing it in a different place, as though it wasn't it to see. Okay. Is it in the eye of the beholder? So now let's be very clinical. If you could come with a scalpel or somebody's looking at the rainbow and say, keep looking at it, and cut open their eye, would you find the rainbow in their eye? I don't think so. Maybe in their brain. We need more than a scalpel now, we need a chopper, right? So somebody who's looking at say, keep looking at it, we're doing a very valuable scientific experiment, and you chop open their brain. Will you find red, blue, indigo, violet, all those colors in the brain? Where? Where are those colors? Can you tell me? But they're very definitely perceived, and you can make it happen. You bring together the causes and conditions, the water, the light, the human eye, the human brain, infallible. There'll be a rainbow experience. And for somebody who doesn't think about it, it's out there. It's up in the sky. And any fool can see it. Look, it's there. Beautiful. Come on, look. Can you see it? Well, there you are. Or mirages in the desert. It's another, even more vivid example. So here, it says, then about illusion and non-illusion. So now, okay, you're getting wiser by the moment now. You've done the investigation. You know the interdependence causes it. Now you know that you can't find it in the brain, in the eye, in the sky, or anywhere in between. There is no rainbow somewhere. Do you stop seeing the rainbow? What's the difference? You're wise. You know what's going on. You know what's going on. Now, it's okay. Rainbows are a, fun example. Now look at the way you get tied up with life, people, situations, power, material wealth, prosperity, your own body, beauty, ugliness, strength, weakness. What's the difference between pursuing worldly things or pursuing Dharma, often at the cost of worldly things? Because the difference is in the wisdom. It's in the wisdom. So, but you see, when you're wise, you still see the rainbow. So what he's saying here is, there is no difference whatsoever in the actual manifestation of both illusion of a rainbow in the sky and non-illusion, where we know how interdependence causes this experience in what we vaguely call mind, whatever that is. Nobody found the mind to say, oh, that's where the rainbow is. Nobody, not even Buddha. That's the word we use. So in the actual manifestation, there's still a rainbow. But the difference between liberation and bondage is you're wise, and so you don't get caught up in a process of suffering. Or you're not wise and you do get caught up in a process of suffering. So then the second part of this activity accomplishing wisdom says the difference, meaning the difference between Buddhas and sentient beings, is in the presence or absence of dualistic belief. Sentient beings have dualistic belief. They believe in a me separate from other. There's me and there's you. You're different. You're other. There's me and there's it. There's my perception. There's a rainbow, and so on. The enlightened mind not just goes beyond the idea of dualistic belief, the dualistic split, as we call it, that every moment, we're talking about mind moments here, splits reality into this and that. Actually, on the 8th bodhisattva level, that goes forever. So it says, if this were not so, how could the activity of the victorious ones manifest? So we're talking about activity accomplishing wisdom here. And we are learning to see everything that manifests as being part of the accomplishing the activity of the Buddhas, helping us to learn, and in particular to learn about duality and the traps that it makes. Now, carrying on about the next section 4 of 7, about activity accomplishing wisdom, has 5 subsections where we use examples. So we're going to have nice examples now. It's easier. Examples are always nice. We've got a jewel, a mirror, space as our key examples. So it says, taking the example of a wish-fulfilling gem and so forth, and saying that it manifests the ability to act without any conceptualizing, does not mean that it is merely due to others' minds. If it were so, the jhana would come from others' minds. And according to such claim, the jhana would be but illusion. So we're talking about the wisdom of the Buddhas, activity accomplishing wisdom, manifesting in your life. So it says, take the example of a wish-fulfilling jewel. These wonderful things, unfortunately, we don't have any around on our planet at the moment, or if they are, they're kept quite secret. But in the legends, it has its own power. It has its own power. It has its own power. So when we get close to it and connect, it changes things in our life and our wishes are fulfilled. Of course, there are places like this all over the world with the legend, wells where people throw money in, and sacred places where you make wishes. They're all over. There are legends. So what it's saying here is, if you think that's all psychology, if you believe it, it will happen. You go to a place like if here in my house, if I said my front gate is a wish-fulfilling gate, and we got enough publicity and put enough ads on YouTube and so on, then people would start coming to the front gate and touching their heads to it, or just coming by and holding it and making a wish. And then out of those 500 people who did it, maybe 5, their wishes would come true. They say, Ken's gate, it works. And then more people would come and they'd believe in it even more. And their belief, some people think the whole thing is our own projection. And what Karmapa and Maitreya are saying, no. This is a meeting of pure mind, Buddha mind, and your relative good Dharma mind. Then the magic works. If you think that all this Dharma is just psychology, whereas if you believe it enough, it's going to change your own way of working, and that's going to magnetize your own life into doing things, that's not the view. So it says, if that were the case, it wouldn't be Buddha wisdom at work, guiding us on the path. It would just be people's psychology at work. That's what it means. It would come from others' minds, other than Buddha mind. It will be just a product of their own psyching themselves into a state, their own brainwashing through Buddhist ideas. It would come from others' mind, and then jhana wouldn't be real Buddha activity at work through the power of interdependence and connection that we create. It would be just somebody's illusion. The second example about Buddha's activity, because it's so subtle, you see, we need examples, and even then the examples only work to a degree. If one considers that this is the conceptual apprehension of what appears to it, then the reflection in a mirror would also have conceptual apprehension. So it's about a mirror. Sometimes enlightened activity is compared to a mirror. And the main point about enlightened activity accomplishing wisdom or enlightened activity, is that it is non-conceptual. It doesn't need to think. We see those words often. When people try to help each other in the world, what often goes wrong? What do we often say? They didn't think enough, didn't consider what they were doing. In order to do something well, usually we need to think well, think a lot, do a lot of investigation, analysis, think ahead. Yes, but if we do that, what could go wrong? What could go right? Normally, to do something well, we need to think. And if you just charge in and do something without thinking, it can be big catastrophe, right? Sometimes might work. Normally, the better the thinking, the better the activity. This is how humans work. Buddha mind is beautifully active, but that activity is direct, point to point, without any thinking in between. And when you think of what we mean by this Buddha mind that we've looked at, that's operating all the time for billions and trillions of beings, Would it have to be like some supercomputer that's got everyone's situation programmed in and that's working? I've got to do this, got to do this for this, like that, every second? We'll be mad. And if we were praying to become Buddhas, do you want to become that madhouse that's got to think for at least 8 billion humans on this planet? You want some peace. You haven't tried helping one person or 3 people. Honestly. So we need to think about what is not thought. We need to think about non-thought and to understand that the way Buddha mind helps us, the way the eternal, perfect, so pure, so kind mind helps us is direct. So it's the mirror helps us understand that. Whether you put one, I always get the same examples, but I can't help thinking of it. I'm in France. I live in France. Every year we have the Tour de France, the cycle race. And I'm thinking about a mirror. Okay, a mirror in a shop window, and the Tour de France comes by, hundreds and hundreds of cyclists. Before they come, you've just got the mirror in the shop window, and it's got the reflection of whatever's opposite it in the street. And then boom, 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 boom. Each cyclist comes by, different bike, different person, different circumstances. Does the mirror suddenly have to get its act together and think, oh, I've got to reflect that perfectly, this one, that one, that one? And then when they're all gone, oh, thank goodness for that, I can get back to reflecting the shop on the other side of the road? Of course not. But does it reflect everyone perfectly? Yes. And even you could put 1 billion cyclists plus 10,000 trillion mosquitoes going by, and it will still reflect everyone perfectly without thinking. That's our example. The actual reality, you need to meditate until you feel it, and then it's easy. The next example is space. Beings' illusions, as many as they are, appear as the object of jhana, wisdom. However, the jhana is not sullied by illusion. For instance, the elements manifest in space. So I think we have to speed up, otherwise we'll never finish today. So anyway, Buddha mind can interact with our mind. There are so many beings, each with their own illusions, and their own illusions changing split second by split second. For it to be wise about what is its object, being's illusions, and of course it needs to be wise to help, to interact, as we've just seen, but it is not damaged by those illusions. That's words. Now let's think your mind, my mind. When we get involved with helping somebody, does their being, their presence, their thoughts, their emotion, their pain, what they are, does it drag us in? Does it occupy mind time? Does it corrupt our own mind, put it down, take it away from its center, and so on? We have to explore that. And part of our bodhisattva learning is learning to help without involvement. And then bit by bit, it becomes direct, spontaneous, non-conceptual help. It's a whole journey of apprenticeship. So here we're looking at the end product, Buddha's wisdom of helping, and in particular is called here the wisdom of variety, knowing how varied beings and their situations are. But it's not solid. It's a bit like the Christian expression, in the world but not of the world. Something like that. So the example is space. Space is not burnt by fire. Space is not drowned by water. Space is not crushed by earth. Whatever happens in space over all the years, space is never damaged. Yet without space, none of those things can happen. No space, fire can't burn. No space, water can't flow, and so on. Space is there. Space is needed. Space gives so much, but space itself is not damaged by where it's giving. So it says again, space, yeah. And then the next section, we've got to number 5 somehow. It's about the connection with enlightened activity. The wisdom of the Buddhas, jhana of the victors, sees beings, yet it is unsullied by such things. So even though Buddha wisdom is aware of what we call illusions, let's not say Buddhas are aware of illusions. Let's just say they are accomplishing their activity. Because each illusion is like a key to a lock. It's only by working with illusion we can get out of illusion. You won't get out of illusion by working with something else. You need to see where you've gone wrong in order to go right. So rather than talking about this delusion of mine, let's see this as this key to liberation of mind and start to see the light at work in our life. Now the next section, because there we were looking at enlightened activity, is about the wisdom of sameness, another of the Buddha wisdoms, identity, sameness. The mind present when the 3 obscurations are purified. So the 3 main ones are ignorance, hostility, and desire, let's say. When those 3 are gone, then there is a mind of sameness. Sameness means things are identical, and it's the wisdom of identity. And it means we all have an identical identity. An identical identity. It's who we are. It's our ID. It's our identity. And it says it also is quiescence. Our true nature is peace. When the desire goes, when the hostility and rejection goes, when the ignorance goes, then there is most wonderful peace. We can't even say wonderful anymore, because it's wonderful compared with what was there before, but it's just peace. It's just natural peace. That peace is endowed with loving kindness and great compassion. So the sameness, the identityness of you and me is peaceful, it is loving, it is kind, it has great compassion. And so that sameness manifests all the various Buddha realms, medicine Buddha, Tara, whichever ones it is. So Sambhavukaya, and so on. It says this is taught in order to refute the ideas of those who have a position similar to the Hinayana, where in Hinayana they think when you get to the end of your journey, there's nothing. They say it's like a candle going out. The wax has all gone, it's burned. The wick has all gone, it's burned. The light has all gone. Nothing. Forever. Because all of it was suffering. And now, thank goodness, the suffering's gone. And there is a peace which is total stillness. We're not saying that. We're saying that qualities are there. Those qualities, love, compassion, peace, of course, and wisdom, and all the qualities we've been looking at. So our view is not that of the Hinayana. Now, very briefly, we have a point about the three kayas being permanent. Now, permanent, you see, this is, we're Buddhists talking about what's permanent. Buddha. So we've seen the three kayas in previous talks: Dhammakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Manakaya. They're permanent, but in different ways. So it says there's a wisdom about the threefold permanence. First, the permanent nature is Dhammakaya. That's Buddha, as I said so many times, changeless, timeless, pure space of mind is Dhammakaya. So that's permanent because it just never stops, never changes. It's not impermanent. It's not impermanent. It always has been, always will be, so it's permanent by nature. The Sambhogakaya that manifests pure lands to the great bodhisattvas, so many thousands of Buddha pure lands, where there is something to see, someone to see, and teachings to hear, and blissful sensations to feel, and so on. That is permanent because it's always happening, but it's not like a fixed image, a photograph. It's permanent because it's always happening. As long as there are open minds of bodhisattvas and the pure nature of mind, Buddha, there will always be interface. So it could be manifesting as the healing qualities of medicine Buddha, the fearless activity of Tara. It's always happening somewhere for somebody. But it's not always the same thing happening for everybody. It's not permanent in that sense. Same thing for the Nimanakaya, except there the activity is not simply like medicine Buddha's Pure Land, which is always on screen, no matter which bodhisattva's in the cinema. It's always the film showing somewhere. It's not like that. Nimanakaya is how Buddha mind can operate in our life to give us sacred experience, to give us teachings through human mouths and so on. That's very varied. It can be through human beings, through Dhamma, formal teachings. You can just be looking at a flower and then something deep happens in your mind. So many different ways, but the thing is, that is always happening. It's different from the constant pure lands for the bodhisattvas. It's here, there, but always throughout all the realms of existence. Nimanakaya is always manifesting to help. So three sorts of permanence, as opposed now to three impermanences. So mentally fabricated shunyata, voidness, emptiness, is not permanent. Thank goodness for that too. So people who get themselves stuck in a mindset of first words, where they psych themselves into a state, it's all illusion, or it's all empty, man. Nothing exists. Nothing exists. And so on. And then after the words, it becomes such a mind state. You just see everything through those eyes, experience everything that way. So that's not real shunyata. And thank goodness it doesn't last. Otherwise we'd be stuck in first a helpful mindset, but then a damaging mindset, as we've seen many times. The mind of conceptual discursiveness is not permanent. Thank goodness for that. You know, your mind, my mind that's talking all the time, reflecting, telling a story, thinking about it, wondering about that, and then, the voice in the head. That's not permanent, thank goodness. It will come to an end. And then the 6 clusters are the 5 senses. So eye that sees, object that's seen, visual consciousness, 1. Ear that hears, sounds, hearing consciousness, 2. The 5 senses, then plus the mind which knows, mental objects, memories, fantasies which are known, mental consciousness, so that's number 6. These are called the 6 groups or the 6 clusters. Are products of our past karma. Being products, they are not permanent. So then it says, from this point of view, however, there is that threefold permanence of the kayas. The threefold impermanence is impurity. The threefold permanence is wisdom itself. And then some points which are just being made. We won't explore them. It says, this Buddha essence is not like the self of the Tirthikas. Tirthika, it gets very badly translated sometimes as heretics. And it means non-Buddhists. It just simply means non-Buddhists, but it's a nice term. This way, heretics, which is not a nice term, doesn't fit. Tirthika means those who are on the steps. It's like they're on the rungs of the ladder. They're getting there. They're spiritual people. They're people who are not just involved in self-gratification. They have a notion of spirituality. They are looking. From a Buddhist point of view, they don't quite get it right, but it's wonderful that they are looking and that they're finding, and the not getting it quite right is a very good step on the way to getting it really right. So Tirthika, but they often have ideas of self, of an ego, of a soul, of an Atman, super self. And it says because it's not postulated by the intellect. Perhaps a vivid example of this is like the Christian creed, where you recite, I believe in this, and you repeat it again and again until you really do believe in it. That's generated by the intellect. This, what we believe in, is. Not is because we believe it is. It's just when we still and open our mind, we find it everywhere. We're not psyching ourselves into believing Buddha nature. We are quietening down and discovering. It's not like the peace of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, which is, as I just described, the candle going out, because all the qualities are there. Even though we use the word kaya, which in Sanskrit means body, the bodies of the Buddha, it's not like bodies of sentient beings, because their bodies are generated by karma, tainted conditions. So I've got Ken's body that was just in hospital, and you've got your bodies, and we need to eat, go to the toilet, and all that kind of thing. Here we're talking about what can manifest to our mind as Buddhas, as Pure Lands, as paradise, so wonderfully. But it's not like a body that's somewhere that's been generated by causes and conditions. It is not reversible, because what has been made manifest is what was is at last recognized. It's not generated by the conditions of our path. Our path has taken away the blockages. Now what always has been is, and once you get there, that's irreversible. Stains will never rise again, because what causes them, this foreign element, foreign to Buddha nature, of imaginary projections, gone. Therefore, this is why we say, Buddha, the awakened state of this very mind of ours, is present right now, but unrecognized. And then we have a last section, in this description, which is scriptures, as I said at the beginning, scriptural support. It says, when it's realized, it's like when heat on iron or dim objects in front of the eyes cease. So iron in our normal world is at room temperature. Of course, you can heat it up and then it becomes red, it becomes white. But then if you take away the heat, it will very naturally come back to being solid, looking like a block of iron does in everyday life. So once we stop firing up the mind with desire and passion and ignorance and all the rest of it, once we take away that source of heat, then mind settles to what it always was. Just an example. So he says, do not say that the Buddhas have this deluded mind. In other words, don't go around saying, I'm Buddha. Yeah, Maitreya said it, I'm Buddha. Look, hello, I'm Ken, Buddha, Buddha Ken. No, I'm not talking about that. All of this text has been saying what we're really talking about. So do not say that Buddhas are this deluded mind. And don't say that there isn't wisdom. Now that's a quote from the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara. There's another quote now from the Mahayana Vimsika by Nagarjuna. Because ultimately, in the ultimate sense, there's no arising in terms of that, then ultimately there's no liberation either. Like space, such is the Buddha, of one nature with beings. Because this side and the beyond have no arising, there is not any nirvana existing by nature either. Therefore, products are truly void, the domain of omniscient jhana. Yeah, I won't explain that one, take a week, but it's just a quote to support what we've already been looking at from Nagarjuna. And then from Asanga's Uttara Tantra, the main Buddha nature text, Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, see, he's quoting the Buddha, he's quoting Nagarjuna and Asanga. These are the two great fathers of Mahayana Buddhism. All Mahayana Buddhism comes from Nagarjuna and Asanga and their disciples. Because it's very subtle, it's not within the scope of study. So here we're talking about Buddha mind itself. You can't study, and then you get it. You won't put ideas together and then, oh yeah, right, got it. It's beyond study. We need to study to get there, but it can't be grasped by study. Because it's the ultimate, it's not within the scope of deep reflection, sitting very quietly, letting the ideas come to life in your mind. Because it's the deep true nature, it's not within the scope of worldly meditations, mindfulness, shamatha, ordinary vipassana, insights into worldly. Summary, what we're talking about in this whole text, Tathagata Garbha, is the domain of jhana, enlightened wisdom, but that is self-cognizant. It knows itself. And for us, through faith in this nature, and through what is spontaneously present, this nature. So we have this nature. If we have faith in this nature, then bit by bit, and in the end, the ultimate will arise in us and our journey will be over. Alas, not realizing this state of affairs, that we have Buddha nature with its qualities. Immature beings wander in the ocean of samsara. So now we've finished most of our talks, which have been this detailed exploration of Buddha nature. In the text itself, we come to the conclusion. big part number 3. It's in 2 parts. First, Karmapa says, where does he get this information? It says, with reference to the teachings of the great victor, the Buddha, and of Manjushri and Maitreya. So Manjushri, Bodhisattva, was the inspiration for Nagarjuna. Maitreya Bodhisattva was the inspiration for Asanga. So these 2 main fathers of Mahayana Buddhism, actually if we go back 1 generation beyond the human beings to the celestial bodhisattvas, then Manjushri and Maitreya. And by the power of their blessings and that of mighty Chinrezig, this was written by Rangjung Dorje, 3rd Karmapa. The Karmapas are seen as the emanations of Chinrezig Bodhisattva. That's the first part. Where did he get the conclusion? Where did he get these teachings? And the second part is a prayer. May all beings have the final and unmistaken recognition of this Tathagata, this essence of all. The Buddhas, the pith of the Vajrayana, establishing Buddha essence, is complete. Now that last line takes us into a whole other area. The text has been about Buddha nature. And now he says, understanding this, Buddha nature, this is the heart, the pith, the core of all Vajrayana practice. Because once we know we have Buddha mind, then we can understand that it can manifest. As Chinrezig, for instance, we can do Vajrayana practice of Chinrezig to connect with it. Chinrezig becomes our Yi-Dam. Yi-Dam is very important in Vajrayana. Yi means mind, Dam means connection. The way we connect with our Buddha mind is through the Yi-Dam or Chinrezig or any of those practices. So now we need to conclude. I'd like to conclude because, when we do a course, then it's a series of individual teachings. We should do a good dedication at the end. I'd like to repeat what I said at the beginning. All these Buddha nature teachings take place within the context of our Bodhisattva journey, the wonderful Mahayana of loving care. And so I'd like to read you some lines about that. And if you'd listen to them and think of this as a way of dedicating, then we are dedicating whatever was good in this course through my explaining the Dharma according to the lineage transmission I received, according to you listening well and taking the teachings to heart. We are dedicating them in the longer term for us and all our Dharma brothers and sisters, that life after life after life, we meet these teachings and we follow them, the Bodhisattva teachings, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. We take refuge in all the Buddhas, and likewise we take refuge in the Dharma and in the Bodhisattva Sangha. Just as the Buddhas of the past first resolved to reach enlightenment and then progressed stage by stage through the different levels of Bodhisattva training, so in the same way we also cultivate a mind intent upon enlightenment for the good of each and every sentient being. We too shall progressively practice that training. And now my life is fruitful. I've achieved true humanity. Today I'm born in the family of Buddhas. Today I become heir to Buddhas. Now, no matter what is required of me, I will act in accord with this, my kindred family, and will never do anything which might sully this faultless and noble line. Just as a blind person might find a jewel among heaps of rubbish, so this bodhicitta has somehow arisen in me. It is the elixir of life, produced to vanquish death in the world. It is an inexhaustible treasure, eliminating the poverty of the world. It's the supreme medicine that alleviates the illness of the world. It's a tree of rest for beings exhausted from wandering the roads of worldly existence. It is the universal bridge for all travelers to cross over painful states of existence. And bodhicitta is the rising moon of the mind that soothes the mental afflictions of the world. It is the great sun dispelling the darkness of the world's ignorance. It is the fresh butter formed from churning the milk of Dharma. For the caravan of beings traveling the plains of worldly existence and starving for the meal of happiness, it is the feast of happiness that satisfies them all. So today, in the presence of all those protectors of beings, I invite each and every sentient being to be my guest at the great celebration of Buddhahood, as well as the well-being there will be until that's achieved. Therefore, gods, demigods, and others truly rejoice. Precious bodhicitta, may it arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May it never decline, but increase more and more. And now the usual dedication prayers. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. By the main enemy, mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in whom it has not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Okay, so the talk was a bit longer this morning because I had to finish. So anyway, now we have some few minutes with each other.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, Charlie.
Just to thank you so much for all these teachings and every Saturday you've been here, and because I'll not be with you on a Saturday till May.
Yeah.
But just basically to thank you. I mean, it's been really beneficial for me, to have something, even though a lot of it just goes over my head, It's just,
Yeah, but it goes over the head, but it goes into the heart too.
Yeah, that's what I feel, but just being here and joining you is enough,
Yeah.
So to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Charlie. It really is a joy for me. And have a lovely retreat, huh? Have a great retreat.
Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like you, Charlie. It's lovely to have somewhere to turn up to be with. And some things go in. And it's always a joy and a blessing. And your efforts are so much appreciated, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I had a question about Mahayana Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And why is compassion kind of introduced at this point in particular?
It's not introduced, it's taken to its fullness. If we look at the basic teachings of the Buddha, then you get like the 4 Brahma Viharas, limitless love, limitless compassion. They're there. They're there, and they're sincere, but they're not taken to their full. And they're mainly there because they're good for us. There's something I noticed in secular mindfulness teachings, like the one that Aberdeen University does with Samiling, when they extended it from the first basic course into a second year or second stage. Then it was a lot about compassion. But the basic thing is compassion's good for you. All these studies about what compassion does for your brain and how it calms you and so on. Because the whole basic Buddhist teaching that we sometimes call Hinayana or Shravaka is mainly there so that we can free our own mind. That's very, very important. It's the first priority. Can't really free anybody else until we've freed ourselves. So that can be done. It can be done. But to go from there to where for the rest of all of our lives we're going to be a servant for everybody, it's not for everybody. It takes an awful lot of groundwork, things to be done before somebody's ready for that. And then compassion needs to be the be-all and end-all, the basis for everything. So compassion's taken to its fullness. As are the teachings on shunyata, emptiness, which are there in the basic teachings about non-ego. We don't have a self. Just now they need to be taken to their full about how nothing exists in its own right.
Thank you. That solved the problem. Thanks.
Great. Great. Okay, well, next week we start the teachings on karma and commitment. First, we look at the power of karma and interdependence to see how everything happens through them. And then, because we have some understanding of that, we can understand the value of us holding to certain promises and commitments so that we change our own karma patterns, we change our own karma stream. And it's a bit like railway tracks. From the inevitable railway tracks of the karmic momentum, we learn how to switch points and go onto other tracks and other tracks and head towards enlightenment. So the first part's about karma and interdependence, and also the karma of meditation, shamatha, and then the second part's about commitment. So I'll probably see many of you then and wish you a very, very good week in between. Okay, bye-bye for now. And hello and goodbye to those I missed at the beginning.
You can.
Thanks so much, Ken. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Love now. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Kim.
Bye.
Bye.